The sound of 847,000 notifications is what a breaking heart sounds like in the digital age. Each ping. Another stranger watching your worst moment on repeat. Before we dive into Hannah's story, if these kinds of real-life experiences matter to you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your comments mean everything. They show these stories reach the right people. And if you'd like to help me keep sharing these important stories, there's a thanks button below. Every contribution helps me find and tell more stories that need to be heard. Thank you for being here. I need to tell you about the day Hannah Walker learned that sometimes the person who saves you is the one who refuses to save you at all. It was supposed to be just another Thursday at Westfield High. Career Day. The kind of event where successful parents parade through hallways lined with motivational posters, where teenagers pretend to care about 5-year plans while secretly counting minutes until lunch. Hannah had begged her father not to come. Richard Walker was a prominent civil rights attorney, the kind who made headlines defending the defenseless. But Hannah didn't want to be seen as the lawyer's daughter. She just wanted to be seen as Hannah. Or better yet, not seen at all. You see, Hannah Walker was born with Poland syndrome, a rare condition that left her without a right arm from just below the shoulder. 16 years of adapting, of learning to tie shoes with one hand, of mastering zippers and buttons and all the mundane miracles that others take for granted. 16 years of being extraordinary at being ordinary. But 3 months at a new school had taught her that teenagers see differences the way sharks smell blood in water. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror that morning, October sunlight streaming through windows that faced the California hills. The swimming trophies on her shelf caught the light gold and silver memories from a different life, a different school, where she'd been Hannah the state champion, not Hannah the girl with one arm. She pulled on a long-sleeved shirt, dark blue, the kind that didn't draw attention. Her morning armor. "You can do this, Hannah," she whispered to her reflection. "Just one more day." The irony wasn't lost on her. One more day. One hand, one girl against a world that insisted on staring. She grabbed her backpack, specially modified with magnetic closures she could manage solo, and headed downstairs where her father was already dressed in his court suit, the charcoal gray one that meant business. "You sure you don't want me to skip career day?" Richard asked, not looking up from his coffee. He had this way of asking questions that weren't really questions, lawyer habits that followed him home. "Dad, I'm fine, really." Hannah poured orange juice with practiced precision. The carton held steady between her chest and hand. "Besides, won't you be busy destroying some corporation or saving democracy or whatever?" Richard smiled, that half-smile that appeared in newspaper photos above headlines about landmark cases. Just a school board meeting later. Routine stuff. He studied his daughter over his mug. "You know, if anyone's giving you trouble, they're not." The lie came easy as breathing. What was she supposed to say? That Ethan Sullivan had made her freshman year a careful navigation of hallways and hidden corners, that she ate lunch in the art room most days to avoid the cafeteria, that she'd given up swimming because the thought of changing in front of other girls, of being that exposed, made her sick. "Okay." Richard set down his mug. The ceramic click against granite countertop somehow final. "But remember what I've always told you. The law isn't about punishment. It's about patterns." Hannah finished, rolling her eyes with the affection only a daughter could manage. "I know, Dad. You've only said it 1,000 times. Patterns and evidence," he corrected, grabbing his briefcase. "Speaking of which, I'll be at school around noon. Try not to be too embarrassed by your old man talking about tort reform." After he left, Hannah stood in the kitchen, listening to the house settle into quiet. Somewhere outside, a mockingbird ran through its repertoire of stolen songs. She thought about skipping school, about claiming cramps or a headache or any of the 100 small lies that buy a day of peace. But she'd already missed too many days. Any more, and the school would call home. And then Dad would know. And then no. She grabbed her keys from the hook by the door. Just one more day. Westfield High School sprawled across 20 acres of prime California real estate, all glass and ambition. The kind of place that printed its college acceptance rates on banners hung from the gym. 2,000 students navigated its halls like schools of fish, each group with its own current, its own unspoken rules about who belonged where. Hannah had learned the geography of survival quickly. Enter through the side door by the music rooms less crowded. Take the long way to English to avoid the senior lockers where Ethan held court. Eat lunch when the art teacher, Miss Chen, opened her room for quiet reflection. It was a careful choreography, a daily dance of invisibility. But today felt different from the moment she walked in. There was an electric anticipation in the air. The kind that precedes storms or standoffs. Groups clustered tighter. Phones out more than usual. Whispers following her down the hall like autumn leaves skittering across pavement. In AP History. Ethan Sullivan sat 3 rows back. 2 seats over, close enough that she could feel his presence like heat from a radiator. He was handsome in that casual way that came from good genes and better confidence. The kind of boy who'd never had to think about how many hands it took to open a combination lock. His father owned 3 car dealerships. His mother sat on the hospital board, and Ethan himself ruled Westfield's social ecosystem with the kind of power that didn't need to be spoken aloud. "Nice shirt, Hannah," he said as she passed, voice pitched just loud enough for others to hear. "Hiding something." The laughter rippled through the room, soft but sharp. Hannah kept walking, found her seat, opened her textbook to Chapter 12, The Progressive Era, Reform, and Reaction. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned pages. Just words, just noise, just one more day. But Grace Anderson, sitting 1 row over, caught her eye. Grace, with her paint-stained fingers and quiet rebellion, who spent more time sketching in margins than taking notes. She didn't laugh. Instead, she tilted her notebook so Hannah could see a perfect caricature of Ethan with devil horns and a tiny brain. Hannah bit back a smile. The morning crawled forward in 50-minute increments. Chemistry, where she partnered with silence. English, where they discussed symbolism in the scarlet letter, while Hannah felt the weight of her own unwanted marking. Pre-calculus, where numbers at least made sense, where X could be solved for and answers were absolute. Then came lunch. The cafeteria at Westfield was more food court than traditional lunchroom, 5 different stations, offering everything from sushi to pizza. A coffee bar that rivaled Starbucks, and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the space into a greenhouse of teenage drama. Hannah usually avoided it entirely, but today Ms. Chen had a parent conference. The art room was locked. She stood at the entrance, tray balanced in her left hand, surveying the landscape. The popular table commanded the center like a castle keep. Ethan's kingdom of Letterman jackets and careful cruelty. The theater kids clustered near the windows, all dramatic gestures and inside jokes. Athletes took up 3 tables by the pizza station. A confederation of sports united by protein shakes and prospects. And there, In the far corner by the emergency exit, an empty table, safe harbor. Hannah moved carefully, tray steady, eyes forward. Don't look at them. Don't give them reason to look at you. The food court buzzed with typical Thursday energy complaints about tomorrow's calculus test. Speculation about who was taking whom to homecoming. The eternal debate over whether the pizza was actually cardboard in disguise. She was halfway to safety when she heard it. The shift in conversation. The way noise can crystallize into attention. A path cleared in front of her. Too convenient to be natural. And there was Ethan, standing by the condiment station, phone already out. "Hey, Hannah!" His smile was all teeth. No warmth. "Heard you were quite the swimmer at your old school. Keep walking. Don't engage." But her path led right past him, and his teammates flanked the aisle like a gauntlet. Jake Morrison, Connor Phillips, Tyler Nash, boys who'd peaked at 17 and didn't know it yet. "State champion!" "Right," Ethan continued, loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. "Must be tough, with your, situation." The word hung in the air like a slur. Situation, as if she was a problem to be solved. A circumstances to be managed. Hannah's grip tightened on her tray. The chicken tenders and fries suddenly seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. "I manage fine," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Oh, I bet you do." Ethan moved closer, his friends forming a loose circle. "But I was wondering, how do you swim butterfly with just one wing?" The laughter erupted like a dam breaking. Not everyone Hannah could see, faces twisted in discomfort. Others deliberately looking away, but enough. Enough to make her skin burn. To make the fluorescent lights suddenly too bright. The air too thin. "That's not—" Grace Anderson stood up across the cafeteria, voice cutting through the noise. "That's not funny. Ethan, relax. Anderson, just curious about the physics of it." Ethan's eyes never left Hannah's face, drinking in her discomfort like wine. "No offense, right? Hannah, we're all friends here." This was the moment, the crossroads where she could laugh it off, play along, deflate his game by refusing to be a victim. Or she could stand up for herself, risk escalation, chance making everything worse. Hannah had become an expert at these calculations, the mathematics of survival. But today, something was different. Maybe it was the weight of too many silent lunches, too many avoided hallways, too many nights lying awake, replaying moments when she should have spoken up. Maybe it was the memory of her father's voice. The law isn't about punishment. It's about patterns. "We're not friends," Hannah said, each word clear as struck crystal. "And you're not curious, you're just cruel." The cafeteria went silent. Even the kitchen staff seemed to pause, the clatter of dishes suspended. Ethan's smile faltered, just for a second, before reforming into something harder. "Cruel, that's a strong word. Hannah, I prefer honest." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and sharp. "And honestly, I think everyone here is tired of pretending you're not a freak." The word hit like a physical blow. Freak. In all her 16 years. Through all the stares and whispers and pointed curiosity. No one had ever said it to her face. It was the word that lived in the shadows of more polite prejudices. The thing people thought but didn't say. Now it was out there, naked and ugly in the cafeteria air. "Ethan?" A new voice. Quiet, but firm. Natalie Sullivan stood at the edge of the circle. her purple hearing aids catching the light. Ethan's younger sister. A freshman with their mother's eyes and their father's stubborn chin. Her hands moved as she spoke, sign language accompanying her words. "Stop it. Go sit down, Nat," Ethan said, not looking at her. "This doesn't concern you." It does, though. Natalie's voice was steady, but Hannah could see her hands trembling. "You're being exactly like Dad." Something flickered across Ethan's face, pain, anger, recognition gone too fast to catalog. The comparison to their alcoholic father was a blade between ribs, precisely placed. "I said sit down." The words came out as a snarl, causing Natalie to flinch. Several students pulled out phones, sensing drama worth recording. And that's when Hannah saw him. Richard Walker stood just inside the cafeteria entrance, visitor's badge clipped to his suit jacket. He must have arrived early, decided to grab lunch before his presentation. His eyes met Hannah's across the crowded space, and in them she saw a father's rage carefully contained behind a lawyer's calculation. "Don't," she thought desperately. "Please, don't save me. Not here. Not like this." Richard took a step forward, then stopped. His hand moved to his pocket, and for a moment Hannah thought he was reaching for his phone to call the principal, to unleash the kind of legal hurricane that had made him famous. Instead, he simply stood there, watching, waiting. No, not just waiting, recording. The realization hit Hannah like cold water. Her father wasn't going to ride to her rescue. He was gathering evidence. "What's wrong, Hannah?" Ethan asked, mistaking her glance for fear. "Looking for a teacher to save you, or maybe—" His eyes lit up with malicious inspiration. "Maybe you're hoping someone will give you a hand." He laughed at his own joke, shoulders shaking with mirth. Connor and Jake joined in, a chorus of cruelty. Tyler had the grace to look uncomfortable, but not enough to speak up. Hannah stood frozen, Trey growing heavier by the second. Around her, the cafeteria had become an arena. 2,000 eyes waiting to see blood. She could feel their anticipation like humidity before a storm. Some wanted her to cry. Others wanted her to fight. Most just wanted a show. Something to break the monotony of Thursday lunch. She thought about Monday's assembly on bullying prevention. The principal's earnest speech about see something, say something. She thought about the posters in the hallway, "In this school, we choose kindness." She thought about every adult who'd told her that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. Where were they now? "Nothing to say?" Ethan pressed, stepping into her personal space. "Come on, Hannah. Don't leave me hanging." "Oh, wait." He gestured to her right side. "Too late for that." The laughter was uglier this time, tinged with discomfort. Even some of Ethan's friends looked uneasy. This was pushing past the usual boundaries, venturing into territory that would be harder to dismiss as just joking around. Grace Anderson pushed through the crowd, her small frame radiating fury. "Back off, Ethan, now." "Or what? Art girl, you'll paint me a strongly worded protest sign. Or I'll remind everyone about homecoming last year." Grace said quietly. "You remember, when you got so drunk you—" "Shut up." The words cracked like a whip. Ethan's face flushed. The careful control slipping. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Grace moved to stand beside Hannah. Solidarity in proximity. "We all have our secrets, Ethan. The difference is, some of us don't need to hurt others to feel better about them." The tension ratcheted higher, a rubber band stretched to breaking. Hannah could feel the situation spiraling could see the exact moment when embarrassment would transform into something worse. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. His friends shifted, pack animals sensing their alpha's distress. "You know what?" Ethan's voice dropped, dangerous in its quietness. "I'm tired of everyone acting like she's some kind of hero just because she's disabled. Like we all have to pretend she's normal." "I never asked you to pretend anything," Hannah said, finding her voice at last. "I just asked you to leave me alone." "Yeah, well, I'm tired of having to look at you every day. It's disgusting." He reached out, fingers brushing her tray. "Trying to eat like a normal person when you can't even—" What happened next would be replayed 847,000 times, dissected frame by frame, commented on by strangers, turned into memes and reaction videos and think pieces about kids today. But in the moment, it was just physics. Ethan's hand pushing up from underneath. The tray flipping in a perfect arc. Food exploding across Hannah's chest, ketchup, and chocolate milk and chicken tenders painting abstract art on her carefully chosen blue shirt. The silence was deafening. Then someone laughed a nervous giggle that broke the dam. Phones appeared like weapons drawn, cameras capturing every angle of Hannah standing there, food sliding down her front, one hand still holding the empty tray. "Oops," Ethan said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush. "Guess one hand really isn't enough." Time slowed. Hannah could see everything with crystalline clarity. Grace's horror, Natalie's tears, the lens of 24 phones focused on her humiliation. She could see Coach Harrison pushing through the crowd from the teacher's table. She could see her father, still as statue, his phone steady, and she could see Ethan's smile. Triumphant, satisfied, the smile of someone who'd never had to rebuild themselves from broken pieces, who'd never had to be stronger than their circumstances. The tray clattered to the floor, the sound echoing like a gavel in the silent cafeteria. Hannah stood there, chocolate milk dripping from her hair, ketchup spreading across her chest like a wound. 2,000 eyes watched, 24 phones recorded, and one father waited. Hannah. Grace reached for her, but Hannah was already moving. Not running, she refused to give them that satisfaction, but walking with the kind of measured steps that cost everything. Each footfall was a small victory against the urge to flee. The bathroom door had never seemed so far away. Behind her. The laughter grew like wildfire. Someone started a slow clap. Another person whooped. But underneath it all, she heard Natalie Sullivan's voice, clear and cutting. "You're disgusting, Ethan. You're exactly like Dad." The girls' bathroom was mercifully empty. Hannah locked herself in the farthest stall and finally let herself break. The tears came in waves. 16 years of being strong, of adapting, of proving herself over and over again, all reduced to a viral moment of humiliation. She could already imagine the caption "One-armed girl fail," the hashtags, the memes. Her phone buzzed, once, twice, then a cascade of notifications that sounded like digital applause for her destruction. She didn't need to look to know what was happening. In the age of social media, trauma traveled at the speed of light. A gentle knock on the stall door. "Hannah, it's me." Grace's voice, soft but insistent. "I grabbed your backpack, and I brought paper towels." Hannah almost laughed at that. Paper towels. As if you could clean up humiliation with bounty. "There's more," Grace continued. "Your dad's outside. He's not coming in, he said, to tell you that, but he's waiting." And Hannah, he got everything on video. The whole thing. The lock clicked open. Hannah emerged, mascara painting dark rivers down her cheeks. Shirt, a Jackson Pollock of cafeteria condiments. Grace handed her the paper towels without a word, then surprised them both by pulling Hannah into a fierce hug, not caring about the food transfer. "I should have said something sooner," Grace whispered. "I've watched him target you for weeks. I'm a coward." "You stood up when it mattered," Hannah said, voice raw. "That's more than anyone else did." They worked in silence, cleaning what could be cleaned, salvaging what dignity remained. Grace produced a Westfield high hoodie from her backpack, paint-stained, and 2 sizes too big. But clean. Hannah pulled it on. The soft cotton-like armor against the world waiting outside. "Your dad," Grace said carefully, "he's kind of amazing. Any other parent would have gone nuclear. But he just watched. Documented like he was building a case." "That's because he was," Hannah said, recognizing the truth as she spoke it. "He's teaching me something. I just have to figure out what." Richard Walker waited in the hallway, a solid presence among the chaos of passing periods. Students gave him wide berth. Something about his stillness suggested barely contained fury. When he saw Hannah, his face cycled through emotions too fast to catalog before settling on something that looked like pride mixed with pain. "Let's go," he said simply, signing her out at the front office without explanation. The secretary, Mrs. Chen, took one look at Hannah's red eyes and stained hoodie and didn't ask questions. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Richard pulled into a parking lot overlooking the Pacific. The October sun painted the ocean gold, indifferent to human dramas playing out on shore. "Show me," Hannah said. Richard pulled up the video on his phone. Hannah made herself watch, even as her stomach churned. It was worse than she remembered: the calculated cruelty, the pack mentality, her own frozen helplessness. But the camera had caught things she'd missed. Other students looking uncomfortable, a teacher starting to stand, then sitting back down. Natalie Sullivan signing furiously to a friend, tears streaming down her face. 847,000 views, Richard said quietly. In 3 hours. The number was incomprehensible. A small city's worth of people, all witnesses to her humiliation. Hannah felt the weight of those eyes like physical pressure. "Why didn't you stop it?" The question came out accusatory, but Richard didn't flinch. "Because if I had, what would the story be tomorrow?" He turned to face his daughter fully. Lawyer threatens teenager. Helicopter parent can't let his kid fight her own battles. And you'd be the girl whose daddy had to save her forever. So instead, I'm the girl who got food dumped on her. Forever. No. Richard's voice carried the same conviction he used in closing arguments. You're the girl who's about to change everything. But only if you choose to. I can't make that choice for you. Hannah stared at the ocean, watching waves build and crash in endless cycles. What if I just want it to go away? Then we transfer schools, start over. Hope the internet forgets, which it won't. Hope you don't run into another Ethan Sullivan, which you will. Richard paused. Or we fight. Not with fists or lawyers or angry parents. We fight like your mother would have fought. The mention of her mother dead from cancer when Hannah was 3 hit like a physical touch. Sarah Walker had been a disability rights activist, the kind who chained herself to buses and faced down police dogs for accessibility. Hannah had her eyes, her stubborn chin, and, apparently, her sense of justice. How? Hannah asked. The same way we build any case, Evidence, patterns, precedent, and most importantly, Richard smiled, sharp as a blade. Narrative, right now. Ethan controls the story. What if you took it back? They spent the rest of the afternoon in Richard's home office, building a case like preparing for trial. Hannah hadn't known about the other incidents. Maria Santos, a sophomore with cerebral palsy, who'd left school after Ethan's campaign of jokes. David Kim, who'd transferred after his stutter became Ethan's favorite impression. Pattern after pattern, buried in silence and shame. He documents everything, Richard explained, pulling up Ethan's social media. Bullies always do now. They're proud of their work. Here last year's homecoming, the incident Grace mentioned. The video was shaky, taken by someone very drunk, but clear enough to show Ethan Sullivan, golden boy of Westfield High, sobbing in his father's arms. "I'm not like you," he kept saying. "I'm not like you. I'm not like you." His father, clearly intoxicated himself, pushing him away. "Stop crying like a little bitch. Man up." That's why he targets people he sees as weak, Hannah said, understanding flooding through her. He's terrified of being seen that way himself. Hurt people, Richard agreed. But understanding isn't excusing. He made choices. Now he faces consequences. What kind of consequences? Richard pulled up another document. There's a school board meeting next week. They're already discussing new bullying policies. Your principal called it an unfortunate incident to the media. He met Hannah's eyes. What if someone showed them it was a pattern? The thought of standing up in front of the school board, of reliving the humiliation publicly, made Hannah's stomach twist. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. Anger, maybe, or just exhaustion at being afraid. "I need to think," she said. "Of course. But Hannah, while you're thinking, remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and choosing to act anyway." That night, Hannah lay in bed watching the numbers climb. 1 million views, 1.5, 2. The comments were a masterclass in human cruelty. LMAO, she really thought she could eat normal. This is what happens when we coddle disabilities. Ethan's a legend for this. Anyone else thinks she deserved it for being so sensitive. But scattered among the venom were other voices. This is disgusting. That boy should be expelled. I have Poland syndrome too. This made me cry. Anyone know if she's okay? This is horrible. The bystanders are just as guilty. Why did no one help? At midnight, a text from Grace. Check your Instagram. Hannah opened the app to find Grace had posted a series of her artwork. Beautiful, haunting portraits of students at Westfield, each dealing with their own invisible struggles. The caption read, "We all have something that makes us different. The only disability is cruelty. China. Stand with Hannah, Westfield." Change. By morning, it had been shared 3,000 times. Hannah found her father in the kitchen at dawn, already dressed for court, reviewing notes over coffee. "Couldn't sleep either," he asked. "I want to do it," Hannah said. "The school board." "But not alone." Richard smiled. "You won't be, The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Grace became her constant shadow, recruiting others who'd suffered in silence. Maria Santos agreed to speak. Her words filtered through a speech device, but carrying devastating power. David Kim sent a video statement from his new school. Even Natalie Sullivan, defying her family, offered to testify about her brother's pattern of cruelty. But the real surprise came from Coach Harrison. "I've been at Westfield for 15 years, she told Hannah, sitting in her office surrounded by trophies and team photos. "I've written 17 incident reports about bullying. You know how many resulted in real consequences? 0. She pulled out a thick folder. Every report, every complaint swept under the rug to protect the school's reputation. I'm done being complicit." The school board meeting was scheduled for Thursday night, exactly 1 week after the cafeteria incident. By then, the video had reached 4 million views and caught the attention of local media. The district tried to limit attendance. Citing space concerns, Richard filed an injunction. Suddenly, what should have been a routine meeting became a spotlight on institutional failure. Hannah stood in front of her mirror that Thursday evening, wearing her mother's suit jacket tailored to accommodate her asymmetry. No hiding tonight. No long sleeves or careful angles, just truth, presented like evidence. "Ready?" Richard asked from the doorway. "No," Hannah said honestly, "but I'm going anyway." The auditorium was packed. Parents, students, media, all crammed into a space meant for half their number. Ethan sat in the third row with his parents, his father's red face suggesting pre-meeting drinks, his mother's designer sunglasses indoors fooling no one about her Xanax glaze. Ethan himself looked smaller somehow, his usual swagger replaced by sullen defiance. Principal Morrison opened with platitudes about isolated incidents and reviewing policies. The board members nodded along, already drafting mental statements about taking all concerns seriously while changing nothing. Then it was Hannah's turn. She walked to the podium on legs that felt like water. 4 million views worth of humiliation following her. The microphone squealed feedback that sounded like the universe holding its breath. "My name is Hannah Walker," she began. Voice steady, despite the hurricane in her chest. "I was born with one arm. I've spent 16 years adapting to a world built for people with 2. I've never asked for special treatment, just basic human dignity." She clicked the remote Richard had given her. The cafeteria video played on the screen behind her, no sound needed. Everyone had heard the words by now. "This isn't about one lunch tray," Hannah continued as her on-screen self stood frozen in humiliation. "It's about patterns." Click. Maria's face appeared. David's. Others who'd come forward in the past week. "It's about a system that protects reputation over students." Click. 17 incident reports. Names redacted, but dates visible. Years of complaints. Years of silence. It's about adults who see, but don't act. Click. Screenshots from that day, teachers in the background. Watching, not intervening. Who tell us to ask for help, then punish us for needing it. Her voice grew stronger with each word, each piece of evidence. This wasn't a victim's plea. This was a prosecutor's case. "Ethan Sullivan broke me that day," she said, making eye contact with him for the first time. He flinched. But breaking isn't the same as broken. Sometimes we have to shatter completely to rebuild ourselves stronger. She paused, letting the words settle like sediment. "My father is a civil rights attorney. He could have destroyed Ethan legally, financially, completely. But he taught me something more valuable, that real power isn't in having someone fight your battles. It's in standing up and saying, 'Enough.' So that's what I'm saying. Enough." The silence stretched, taut as a held breath. Then Grace stood up in the back row. Then Maria. Then Coach Harrison. One by one, students and teachers and even some parents rose to their feet, not applauding, just standing, witnessing, choosing sides. Natalie Sullivan stood, tears streaming as she signed something to her brother. Hannah didn't need to know ASL to understand the message. Ethan sank lower in his seat. His parents, too, lost in their own dysfunction to notice their son drowning. "We're not asking for punishment," Hannah continued over the rustle of bodies rising. "We're asking for change. Real policies with real consequences. Training that actually trains. A system that protects victims, not perpetrators. And we're not asking anymore. We're demanding." She clicked one final time. A petition appeared, started by Grace. Signed by 1,200 students and counting. Social media campaigns, planned walkouts. The infrastructure of change, built on the foundation of one spilled lunch tray. "You have a choice," Hannah concluded, addressing the board members directly. "Continue protecting the Ethan Sullivans of the world, or start protecting the rest of us. But know this, we're not hiding anymore. We're not transferring schools, or suffering in silence, or pretending it's okay. We're here. We're watching. And we vote in 2 years." She stepped back from the podium into a tsunami of sound applause. Shouts. Board members calling for order. But Hannah only had eyes for her father, who stood at the back of the room with tears on his cheeks, and pride written across every feature. The board voted 7-0 for comprehensive policy reform. Not because they wanted to, but because the cameras were rolling and the internet was watching. Ethan Sullivan received a formal reprimand and mandatory counseling lenient by some standards, but his social execution was already complete. The golden boy of Westfield High was now the face of everything wrong with the system. Hannah found him after the meeting, sitting alone on the auditorium steps. His parents had left separately. His mother in an Uber. His father peeling out with enough speed to leave rubber on the asphalt. "I know you hate me," he said without looking up. "You should." Hannah sat down beside him, surprising them both. "I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you." "That's worse," Ethan laughed bitterly. "The crippled girl feeling sorry for me." "See, that's your problem," Hannah said. "You still think having one arm makes me less than you, but I've spent 16 years becoming more adaptive, more resilient, more grateful for what I have. What have you become?" "Ethan." He didn't answer. Couldn't. Maybe. "Your sister loves you," Hannah continued. "Even after everything, she stood up in there because she loves you. That's not weakness. That's strength you can't even comprehend yet." "She thinks I'm like our dad," Ethan said, voice cracking. "She's right. Today she is," Hannah agreed. "But tomorrow, that's your choice. Just like standing up in there was mine." She left him on the steps, a broken boy contemplating his reflection in the shattered pieces of his reputation. Maybe he'd rebuild better. Maybe not. But that wasn't her story to write. Inside. Richard waited with Grace and the others. Coach Harrison was organizing Victory Pizza. Maria was giving an interview to Channel 7. The world hadn't ended. It had just shifted, slightly but significantly, toward justice. "So," Richard said, pulling his daughter into a careful hug, "how does it feel to change the world?" "Like swimming," Hannah said, surprising herself with the comparison. "Like I've been holding my breath underwater for so long, I forgot what air tasted like." That night, Hannah stood in front of her mirror again, same face, same body, same one arm, but something fundamental had changed. She wasn't hiding anymore, wasn't adapting to a world that saw her as less than. She was demanding that world adapt to her. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You don't know me, but I have cerebral palsy, and I go to Lincoln High. I watched your speech. Tomorrow, I'm reporting my bullies. Thank you for showing me how to be brave." Then another, and another, stories pouring in from across the country, across the world. Kids who'd been broken finding the courage to rebuild. Adults who'd carried decades of shame, finally speaking their truth. The video of Ethan dumping her tray would live forever on the internet. But so would the video of her speech. Two versions of the same story, victim and victor. Broken and rebuilt. The girl things happened to, and the girl who happened to things. Hannah pulled on her swim team jacket, the one she'd hidden in her closet for 3 months. Tomorrow, she'd be back in the pool. Tomorrow, she'd face the stares and whispers with her head high, and her arm cutting through water like it was born to do. Tonight, though, she had a victory pizza to eat. With both hands. Technically, just the one arm and a heart that had finally learned the difference between breaking and being broken. The notification count on her phone had reached 1 million. But the only number that mattered was one. One girl. One choice. One moment of standing up that became a movement. Her father had been right. The law wasn't about punishment. It was about patterns. And sometimes, changing the pattern started with refusing to be part of it anymore. The mockingbird outside Hannah's window sang its stolen songs as she finally slept. Exhausted, but whole. It didn't matter that the notes weren't originally its own. What mattered was how it sang them fearless and full-throated, claiming its space in the darkness. Tomorrow, 847,000 strangers would still know her worst moment. But tonight, one girl knew her best one, and that girl was herself.